The entire story of Plo Koon. 21 minutes. Let's do this.
5 years before the Battle of Yavin, on the most heavily surveilled planet in the galaxy, a man named Luthen Rail ran an antique shop. On one of the shelves, behind glass, sat a Keldor breathing mask. It belonged to Plo Koon, the most prominent Keldor Jedi of his generation, gone for over a decade. Someone had walked into a war zone and carried
I
it
thought
home.
Plo Koon
He
was
had
just
been
a
one of
random character during the Clone Wars. I know he's a Jedi Guardian. Didn't know he was like that important. You know what I mean? I guess it's like Kit Fisto. He's like a side character, but he's really good because he fought and almost defeated General Grievous. Hello?
the most beloved Jedi the Order had ever produced, the one who came closer than almost anyone to living its code, and in his last year alive, on a sandstorm-blasted moon nobody had a reason to visit, he had come within a year of catching the man running the war. Plo Koon could not breathe the same air as the people he served. He was
Really?
a
He
Keldor,
doesn't breathe oxygen. A Keldor.
a tall, orange-skinned species from a planet called Doran in the expansion region of the galaxy. Doran's atmosphere was mostly helium and a unique gas that the rest
They breathe helium. Just put a helium balloon over his head.
of the galaxy had no real
Wait, is it breathe helium? But I know helium makes your voice become like high pitched and squeaky, but Plo Koon had a very deep voice. I don't know what that. How does that make
name for,
sense?
and to a Keldor, that mixture was normal. To everyone else, it was harmful, so he wore a mask. The mask was never a costume choice. It was the price of staying alive in every room the Order
Oh,
ever
so he's
put
like
him
Anakin, kind of. Anakin needed a mask to breathe, and the entire suit, I guess. But Plo Koon, yeah,
in. He wore it
Plo Koon
without
only needed a
apology,
mask.
and the Council learned to respect him. The mask filtered the Doran air he needed out of atmospheres that would have poisoned him. The goggles did the rest. A Keldor's eyes carried a thin layer of fluid that would simply evaporate in oxygen, and without the
Whoa.
goggles, he would lose his sight in minutes. He wore both every waking hour he spent away from his home world. There was one more layer to the mask. Every Keldor breathing apparatus carried a pattern unique to its wearer's clan, and Plo Koon's was his family's signature. He had been raised in an order that had asked its members to release attachment to family, to name, to origin. He had walked into
That's
that
the
order
Jedi code.
wearing his family name across his face in a pattern only another Keldor would recognize. He never tried to hide it. Every meeting, every briefing, every conversation, the first thing anyone saw was that he was from somewhere else. He was permanently visible as an outsider in the order he had given his life to. He sat at the highest table in the Jedi Order.
Wait, Plo Koon was on the council? I didn't notice him. I didn't notice Yaddle either. I think Yaddle was next to this guy over here. Blocked by, but that guy over there blocked by my webcam. Yeah, I didn't notice Yaddle either. I
Before
only noticed Windu and Yoda.
most of them had grown into their seats, listening to galaxy-shaping problems for longer than most of those Jedi had been alive, behind a mask that would never come off. And the Jedi Master who trained him was a Wookiee. His master was
Oh,
a
yeah, the
Wookiee named
yeah.
Tyvoka.
Yeah, I've never seen a Wookiee one. Tyvoka.
The pairing was extraordinary even by Jedi standards. Wookiees rarely passed the trials. Keldor were rare in
I've
the
never
Order
seen a Wookiee Jedi before. It'll be interesting to see a Wookiee wield a lightsaber.
at all. The two of them walked the temple corridors together, a Wookiee twice the height of his Padawan, beside a masked child whose
Wait,
face
look at this.
corridors together, a Wookiee twice
Her.
the height of his Padawan, beside a masked child whose face nobody else in the building could read. Tyvoka taught him that being conspicuous was not the same as being apart. The Order had taken in a child who wore a mask and assigned him to a teacher who could not speak their language. The lesson of that pairing was that the Order's strength was not in what its members looked like. Plo Koon spent the rest of his life living it. By the time the Sith returned, Plo Koon had already been a master for longer than most of his peers had been alive. When Qui-Gon Jinn arrived on Coruscant in 32 BBY, he carried with him a young boy he had freed from servitude on Tatooine and a wild claim about a Sith Lord on Naboo. The masked Keldor was already seated on the Jedi High Council. He did not speak in that meeting. He rarely spoke in any of them. He listened, weighed what he heard, and offered his read only when it could change the outcome.
Oh wait, no, I was wrong. Yaddle would be. More to the left, I guess.
He had also already done something almost no other council member of his era had managed. He had trained an apprentice all the way to Jedi Knight before the Clone Wars began. Her name was Boltar Swan, a human,
Who's
and
that?
she fought at the first battle of Geonosis alongside her master who had trained her. Then came 22 BBY, the Petranaki Arena on Geonosis. Mace Windu led the Jedi Strike Force into a separatist execution ground to rescue Obi-Wan.
Oh wait, I know.
Mace
I
Windu
noticed,
led the Jedi Strike Force into a separatist execution.
Yeah, that character there with the green lightsaber, that's Kit Fisto, but
Mace Windu led the Jedi Strike Force into a separate.
yeah, this one, she fought Ventress with Ahsoka in one of the Clone Wars episodes, and I think that's that one over there on the left. It's like I think she died 3 times.
Separatist execution ground to rescue Obi-Wan
Shakti, I think her name was, or him, I'm not sure.
Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Padme Amidala. 212 Jedi entered the arena that day. Only 29 walked out. He walked out of the arena on Geonosis. Most
Only
of the
29
Jedi
walked out.
walked in did not. Geonosis marked the Jedi's return to open military action for the first time in a millennium.
Oh, that was 3PO inside. Yeah, that was a droid inside of 3PO's body.
And the survivors were the ones who would carry the war on their shoulders. Plo Koon stepped out of the arena into a role he had not asked for. He was no longer just a senior Jedi Master, he was a Jedi General, given commands of a Republic fleet.
I think all Jedi Knights or Masters, Jedi Knights and Masters are all generals, and Padawans are commanders.
And a clone battalion, expected to lead living soldiers into engagements he had only ever observed from above. Years before that war began, on a planet called Shili, a small Togruta child wandered alone across the grasslands. She was too young to understand the danger she was in, and she was too young to know what she was. Her name was Ahsoka Tano. The masked Jedi who arrived to find her was Plo Koon. He sensed her in the Force before
when was this? What show was this?
Saw her, and he brought her back to the temple himself. She was very young.
I mean, the thing is that if you're a youngling, if you're a kid who's Force sensitive inside the Republic, you don't have a choice. You have to go with them because the Jedi Order argues that if you're Force sensitive and you're a child, then you kind of automatically give consent to be taken away because of the Force. They kind of use that excuse. That's just
small enough to carry up the temple steps in his own.
Yeah, and they have the legal authority to do that as well.
Then he did something almost no Jedi would have done. He found her, and then he let her go. He had the bond, he had the natural pull of the Jedi who had carried her to the only home she would know. None of it mattered. When the council assigned her a master, the Keldor stepped aside, and the assignment went to Anakin Skywalker. She went instead to a newly knighted Jedi with a troubled record, a young man the council had been arguing about for years. He did it because the council asked him to, and because he believed Anakin needed her more than he did. He was wrong about the second part, he was right about the first. By the time Ahsoka was a Padawan...
Really? I think Anakin did need Ahsoka. It would have been worse if... yeah. But that's showing selflessness from Plo Koon.
She was still calling him a name no one else used. That name had to come from somewhere. The only place it could have come from was the years she had spent watching him show up quietly, year after year, without ever asking to be anything more than what he was. Almost every other master and the apprentice in the Order eventually buckled under attachment. The Keldor was the one who did not. He loved her openly, and he refused to make her his property. The Jedi Code did not have a word for it, he held the role anyway. Then the war started. The Republic discovered it had an army nobody had authorized building, and nobody on the Council could explain. Early in the war, Force survivors floated inside a cracked escape pod.
That was
the viewport was iced over, the air was leaking.
Episode 2.
A clone trooper named Sergeant Sinker was exhausted.
Yeah, what is that haircut over there? Why are we doing this?
Half frozen, and trying to explain to the Jedi General floating beside him why no one was coming to get them. He told the Keldor that they were just clones, that they were meant to be expendable. The Jedi answered him with 3 words: "Not to me." His flagship, the Venator-class Triumphant, had been part of a Republic fleet sent to investigate a missing supply convoy near the Abrogado system. What the fleet found was a separatist warship the rest of the galaxy had never seen. The Malevolence was a Subjugator-class heavy cruiser armed with an ion cannon capable of disabling a capital ship in a single shot. 3 Republic warships moved into the system. The Malevolence fired once. All 3 went
I'm up to season 2, by the way, so anything beyond, I guess, anything that's after season 1, probably I wouldn't know about.
Then the turbo lasers opened up. In a matter of seconds, the entire Republic fleet was broken apart. Thousands of clones were lost. Plo Koon, Commander Wolf, Sergeant Sinker, and Corporal Boost survived in a single pod, drifting through a debris field while General Grievous sent droid kill teams to track down any survivors. Keldor's skin was tough enough to survive briefly in vacuum, and biologically the Jedi General was harder to lose than the soldiers floating beside him. He stayed with them. The Galactic Senate refused to authorize a rescue. The Jedi Council, working with no information, was preparing to write the Keldor off as lost. Only Ahsoka believed he was still alive. She talked Anakin into taking the freighter Twilight into the debris field and searching for him herself. That was how she found him, drifting, half-conscious, with 3 of his men still alive beside him because he had refused to let them die.
One of them got shot, I think, yeah.
He spent
by one of the clankers.
Hours in an escape pod with men the rest of the Republic had written off as disposable. He did not let one of them go.
No, I think only... I think the Jedi valued the lives of every clone. That's what I believe. Because like Yoda said, clones you may be, but the Force runs differently in each and every one of you. Or something similar. But I do believe every Jedi valued the lives of the clones.
Was the doctrine of an entire battalion. The 104th, the unit Wolf commanded under Plo Koon, had been nicknamed the Wolfpack Battalion. The elite squad inside it, led by Sergeant Sinker, Boost, Corporal Comet, and a pilot named Warthog, carried the name through every engagement that followed. Every named Wolfpack trooper outlived multiple missions other Jedi units did not survive, and the reason was the man who commanded them.
After Abrogado, an entire battalion.
The survivors changed everything they wore. The original maroon armor was gone. They wore flint gray and pale blue for the rest of the war, and
I've seen one of those guys during Ahsoka's first commanding mission.
Remembrance
didn't know they were Plo Koon's battalion.
Of the brothers they had left in the debris field. That was the proof of everything he stood for. Not a speech, not a vision, not a force power. A military uniform change made by men who had been told their lives did not matter in honor of a Jedi who had refused to agree. And after Abrogado, the Masked Jedi began to carry a private question. He had spent his command in the air alongside a battalion of soldiers who had appeared, fully trained and armed, on a planet none of the Jedi remembered authorizing. The Republic had been handed an army it had not built. Somebody had ordered it. The Council had not. He did not yet know whose name was at the bottom of that order. He would spend the next 2 years quietly trying to find out. Later in the war, the Keldor led the operation that would matter most to him personally for the rest of his life. The moon of Kadava was a Zygerian holding facility, a hanging cage carved into a sheer cliff face, where slavers from across the Outer Rim brought prisoners for processing. The Zygerians had taken an entire colony of Togruta off the planet
one of those Zygerians, I think you called them.
Kyros, and were funneling them through Kadavo to be sold across the galaxy. Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Captain Rex had gone undercover to track the operation and had been captured. Obi-Wan was being worked to death on a different world. Anakin was posing as a slaver. Ahsoka was a prisoner among her own species.
What's a slaver? Is it like an owner of a slave?
Plo Koon led the rescue. He brought a strike.
I learned that in Huttese, slave is Shagga.
Force in low over the canyon.
So Anakin was a Shagga donkey.
Breached the facility's hanging cells and freed the Togruta inside. The Zygerians, when their hold over the prisoners began to collapse, threatened to drop the cells. The Keldor held the cells in the air with the Force, while his troopers pulled the captives out one by one. Obi-Wan, Anakin, Ahsoka, and Rex were extracted alongside the slaves they had been pretending to be. The operation freed hundreds of Togruta from servitude that had nearly broken them. Kadavo is where the abstraction becomes concrete. The code asks a Jedi to act without attachment and without reward. And on that cliff face, Plo Koon did exactly that. He freed a cage full of Togruta, including the child he had carried to the temple a decade earlier, and asked for nothing afterward. Where other Jedi lived the code as a discipline they had to strain towards, he lived it as the obvious thing to do. Across the same stretch of the war,
some of them are the obvious thing to do, but the Jedi are based on complete selflessness, and I don't think every Jedi lived like that. Because I know Obi-Wan fought with passion, Anakin fought with passion, a lot of Jedi fought with passion. So I don't think complete selflessness. I don't think it's something that's achievable or something that's necessarily good, because it's just unnatural.
he carried a range of work almost no other council member matched. He hunted bounty hunters, he led a 4-cruiser task force to extract
I think that was Boba Fett.
Council member matched. He hunted bounty
that was Boba Fett
hunters.
right there.
He led a 4-cruiser task force to extract a Jedi rescue team from a separatist prison on Lola Sayu. Once, after Ahsoka had stowed away on a mission to the Citadel prison, Anakin confronted Plo Koon on the deck of a Republic cruiser and demanded to know whether the Caldor had told her that she could come. The Masked Jedi answered, deadpan, that from a certain point of view, it appeared he had. Then the Council put a job in front of him that he was not prepared to do. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant was attacked. The investigation was botched. Evidence was fabricated. Ahsoka Tano, framed for a crime that she had not committed, was brought before the Jedi Council. The Council, under political pressure from Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, voted to expel her from the Order. The Caldor voted with them. He was the one council member with the deepest personal bond.
I feel like the Jedi have more political power than the Constitution of the Republic.
On tour, the one who should have voted
I don't even know if they have a constitution. It's just called the Republic, so I'm assuming the Republic had a constitution.
Against the expulsion, and instead, he bent with the rest. He bent for the same reason every other Jedi bent. The Order had spent 2 years receiving signals it could not interpret, a war it did not start, an army it did not authorize, casualties it could not justify, a chancellor who quietly accumulated emergency powers while seeming to most of the council to be doing his best. By the time Ahsoka was put in front of them, the council was already running on borrowed certainty, and Plo Koon ran on it with them. He trusted the institution more than he trusted his read of the girl. He was wrong. After the truth came out and Ahsoka was exonerated, the council formally invited her back. The Masked Jedi was the only council member to apologize to her personally. He met her with the affectionate name he had always used for her, the same name he had carried since she was small, Little Soka. The perfect Jedi was not a Jedi who never failed. He was the only one who admitted he had. The day he said that name again in front of the council was the day he stopped being just her quiet sponsor and became the only member of the Order to publicly own a mistake. Ahsoka did not come back. She walked out of the Jedi Temple, away from her master.
She walked away from the Order and had purified lightsabers.
The clones who had followed her into a dozen engagements, and the Caldor who had vouched for her since she was small.
And she survived Order 66 as well, because she walked away.
Followed, Plo Koon was already noticing something else. The cracks in the Order ran deeper than the trial. The Republic he had spent 2 years fighting for did not feel like a Republic anymore. It felt
of course it didn't. It never felt like a Republic.
A machine that someone else was running, and the machine felt wrong. Months later, on a moon nobody had a reason to visit, he found an answer to the question he had been carrying since Abrigado. The moon was called Obadiah, a barren, sandstorm-blasted rock in the territory of the Pike Syndicate, a criminal organization the Republic did not officially recognize. Plo Koon's fleet detected a Jedi distress signal that should not have existed. The beacon belonged to a Jedi shuttle lost over a decade before the Clone Wars began. The Jedi who flew that shuttle should have been declared dead so long ago that almost no one in the Order remembered his name. His name was Sifo Dyas, the Caldor.
Sifo Dyas? Oh, that was the guy who, made the army. The guy who started the clone army.
Landed on Obadiah in a sandstorm.
But I thought Dooku killed him, right? That's how they took over the facility.
Wreckage was half buried in dust, and the wind was loud enough that the troopers behind him had to shout to be heard. He walked through the debris alone, half buried in the sand, Beneath the storm was a lightsaber hilt, and when he
Oh,
bent
so he was
down and
dead.
brushed the dust away, he recognized it at once. Somebody had brought a dead Jedi's weapon to a pike moon and
He was dead, I think. I was right.
left
I
it in the
think.
sand, and the pikes who controlled this moon had not destroyed it. He brought it back to the council on Coruscant. What he had just found was the loose thread that, pulled hard enough, would unravel the entire war. Sifo-Dyas had been struck down on Count Dooku's order years before the Clone Wars began, after secretly commissioning the very army Plo Koon now commanded. That army, the one Wolf and Sinker and Boost belonged to, had been built on a lie hidden from the Council for over a decade. The investigation moved fast. The Council got close. Yoda traced the Sifo-Dyas trail all the way to a confrontation with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine himself. The Chancellor calmly handed the investigation back to the Council and kept it secret. The war moved faster than the investigation, and the Council never quite caught the man behind it. He had almost found him. Almost. A year later, in 19 BBY, the Clone Wars entered its final months. Plo Koon was given command of the 442nd Siege Battalion and sent to the bridge cities of Cato Neimoidia, a Neimoidian purse world critical to the Separatist economy. He won the engagement. His battalion held a planet. The garrison surrendered, and the Republic had taken
That's a cool pattern for the ships, by the way.
Trade Federation's headquarters. For the first time in 3 years, the Keldor had reason to believe the war was almost over. In the hours after, he went up in his Delta 7B Aether Sprite class interceptor on a routine patrol. His call sign was Wolf Leader. Behind him in the formation flew an ARC-170 piloted by a clone captain named Jag, a wingman who had been flying with the 104th for over a year.
That's a movie. That's like a live-action movie. Didn't know they had...
He was one of his men. Then, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine's voice came over the comm. The soldier flying behind his interceptor had followed him for years. Then, a voice on his comm gave him a
Execute Order 66.
new order. The order was Order 66.
Oh, no.
Jag obeyed. He fired. The Delta 7B was hit at close range from behind, and the fighter went down.
How did they not... I think... But Dooku literally told them that there was a traitor among the Republic, and I think I saw a clip of Fives also telling Anakin and the other clones that they had microchips in their brains, and that something bad would happen.
Skies over the bridge cities. The wreckage fell into a building. Plo Koon did not survive. He had just won the engagement. He had no warning. The soldier flying behind him carried a piece of hardware in his skull and
That didn't look like a clone. I guess they can't get the same actor for Jango Fett.
installed at his creation. Plo Koon came as close as any Jedi to catching the Sith Lord running the galaxy, and he was also among the easiest targets that man ever had. Palpatine had eliminated the Jedi who could have exposed him, and used one of the soldiers that
It was 100k Jedi throughout the entire galaxy to 100.
the Jedi loved to do it. His men flew on without him. Decades later, one of them was still trying to explain to himself what had happened. Wolf survived. He had floated beside
That guy was missing an eye.
Plo Koon in the cracked escape pod over Abrigado. He had watched the 104th change the color of their armor in honor of the brothers they had lost. He had stood at every briefing for 3 years of war. He was not over Cato Neimoidia the day his general was lost. He was elsewhere when Order 66 came down, and he served the Empire for years afterwards until somewhere the chip in his skull stopped owning him and he stopped following Palpatine's voice. What broke the hold on him was never clear, not even to him. He only knew
I think that happened in Star Wars Rebels, maybe?
that one
Didn't watch it, I'm just assuming.
day he was no longer the soldier Palpatine had built, and that the general who had refused to leave him in a debris field was still the measure he held himself against. Years passed, and the war followed him into hiding at a distance for the rest of his life. Roughly 15 years after the fall over Cato Neimoidia, on a sun-baked world called Selos, the clone commander was living in retirement with Captain Rex and
I remember in the Obi-Wan show, there was like a homeless clone, just wearing the armor, having the helmets out, asking for
Gregor,
credits.
3 old soldiers in an old ATTE walker, fishing in the desert. A young Jedi named Kanan Jarrus arrived and asked for their help. The clone commander was afraid and tired. He sent a transmission that alerted Imperial Agent Callus to their presence. In the end, when the Empire arrived, he stayed. A year later, the final battle of the clone commanders...
I thought clones only lived for 40 or maybe 50 years.
Career
Because their lifespan is harder for humans.
came at the liberation of Lothal.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. Maybe he was like really young.
He flew an old gunship into Imperial fire for a cause he barely understood, because the people fighting it reminded him of people he used to know. He told them he had followed Jedi into battle before, and in that line was the entire afterimage of Plo Koon's life, spoken by the clone he had loved most. 5 years before the Battle of Yavin on Coruscant, in the antique shop run by a man named Luthen Rail, an Antioch's breath mask appeared on a shelf. No one ever explained how it got there. The mask spoke for itself. Whoever placed it on that shelf had carried it a long way from where the Jedi who wore it had fallen, and the Padawan he had found on Shili, the small Togruta child on the grasslands, the one he had refused to claim, refused to keep, refused to make his own. She outlived him. She outlived the Order. She outlived the Empire. The galaxy still knows her name. She is called Ahsoka Tano. He missed the conspiracy by a year. He fell believing he had won, but the evidence of his life held to the end. He had lived the code more fully than almost anyone around him, and the contrast was not abstract. He had treated soldiers as people in a war that treated them as
At least every Jedi treated clones like regular people.
Numbers. He had found a child and let her go rather than possess her. He had pulled prisoners out of cages on a moon nobody remembered. He had lifted a dead Jedi's weapon out of the sand and brought the war 1 year from ending. Set him beside the rest of the Order, and the difference is plain. Anakin Skywalker loved, and let that love curdle into possession. Plo Koon loved Ahsoka openly and never...
I don't think that the concept of Ahsoka was there during the prequels.
tried to own her. The Council abandoned its own judgment under political pressure at her trial, and so did he. But he was the only member who came back and said so out loud. Where the war hardened most of the Order into certainty, he kept quietly asking the question about the army that none of them wanted to ask. He was not flawless. He was the one who failed least often, and admitted it when he did. What the Order lost when he died was the proof that the code was livable. With him gone, there was no longer a living argument that the Jedi the Order claimed to be capable of producing had ever truly existed. He left behind a soldier who carried the weight of his command for the rest of his life, and a Padawan he had refused to keep who walked through the Empire and out the other side. The daily life of the clones who loved him is its own canon story. So is the long, mysterious life of the most famous Jedi to survive Order 66, the master who taught Anakin and went into exile to wait for what Anakin would become. Both stories
It wasn't exile, he was just hiding.
are next.
He was just hiding from the Empire and the Inquisitors.